in our ACA-920 Configuring Jira Software Boards Configuring Jira Software Boards training. Wow, I said configure in there twice. I'm clearly behind on my coffee. Anyway, I'm going to wait for some folks to trickle on in, and then we'll jump on in. But I'll quickly just drop a poll question. Oh, interesting, Tushar. I can up the gain a little, but I don't want to blow out people's speakers too much. Okay, got a quick poll question. All right, there we go. So just a question for you all to noodle over while we start. Chad, welcome, my friend. Hope you are having a great day. Welcome, Dom's channel. Dom's entire channel is with us. I love that. All right. And about half of us have seen it so far. Awesome. So we've got some folks who missed the first one. No worries if you did. We mainly covered just some basics around Jira, some things that you, if you have used Jira, are already familiar with, and some high-level information on boards. Please drop questions in the chat, and I'll talk more about interaction as we go if anything I say is confusing. But if you've used boards before, this will help expand your knowledge. The focus of this series is to learn how to configure and set up boards. So today we're going to dig into permissions and filters. For me, this was the most confusing part of it because with my complete lack of training in everything Jira, I had no clue how any of it worked, and that made it more than challenging to figure out how do I set up permissions in the board, what do the filters do, how do I modify those, how do I control what pops into my boards. So hopefully we can demystify a lot of that. I'll give folks just another minute while I drink some delicious coffee from my Batman mug. And then we will pop on into our slides. So, my quick way of introduction, my name is Rob. I have spent my career in IT on different aspects of information technology, starting out on a help desk, but ended up as a project manager, a scrum master, that type of role, and ended up using boards quite a bit. In some cases, we used Agile methodology or Scrum when we maybe should have used Kanban, so the two flavors of Agile, but it required me to figure out how to use Jira boards because that's what we used. I've never used a physical board to manage any kind of Agile project, mainly because the teams I've worked with haven't always been virtual. They haven't all been in the same place. And so that's the major advantage something like Jira gives us. Excuse me. Now, ways of interacting, please use the chat. It should be right there over my left shoulder. Please use it to ask questions. I will do my best to prompt for questions, and I can even put I go back and forth on this Q&A question. I can put a drop your questions button at the top. The thing I don't like about this is if you use it, other people can't see the question until I choose to display it. And I do like that folks in the channel can interact. So please let me know what you think of that drop your questions here bar at the top. Please feel free to put a question in there. I'll keep an eye on it or just put it in chat. Please subscribe if you haven't. I am doing this professionally now. So I moved out of my 9-to-5 corporate job and I'm now a full-time content creator, consultant, contractor, that kind of thing. So you'll be hearing different ways to help support me through this. Easiest is subscribe. Even easier is hit the like button. Hitting the like button helps other people find the video. Got about 20 folks and no likes so far, so if at any point in this you like what you're hearing, you like the content, hit the little thumbs up. It should be right under me somewhere down there. And that lets me know you like it, helps other people find it, but also share this. I guarantee you there are other people you know who can benefit from this kind of information. But the big takeaway right now is use the chat. If you're listening to a recording, please use the comments to let me know your thoughts, your questions, what follow-up you need. As I mentioned, we're going to cover two major topics. The first are permissions, and then we'll talk about filters. So we'll cover things like creating boards, how do you become a board administrator, and what does it look like between a company managed and between team managed project because they are different. And even if it doesn't necessarily show up on that ACA 905 exam, understanding these differences will be helpful practically when we do go use Jira. We'll be able to help support our team. We'll be able to guide them and make their lives easier because we'll know the answer to how do we make a board, or how are permissions handled, or how do work items get into the board. And then we'll get hands-on. So we'll go back and forth between these concepts of permissions and then filters, and then actually building, creating the board and examining the board, adding board admins, adjusting filters, what a sub-filter is, which just confused the heck out of me when I first heard about it. It's not exactly like a subquery if you know SQL or SQL, but it's a thing. So here's what we'll dig into today. But a quick pop quiz. True or false? And I'll put this in our poll. Can a team-managed project have multiple boards? And I will promise I will spell the word boards correctly. So just a question to noodle on. I don't think we actually spoke about this last time, but curious what folks know about them. So quick reminders on what we learned last time. Boards let us visualize work, and they'll give us columns that can contain work items. We'll see all of this live in a minute. And then we have two kinds of boards. We have Scrum boards, which have sprints. So anytime you see a board and there's a sprint, complete sprint, add sprint, sprint dates, that tells you right away it's a Scrum board. And that means there's certain features and things that it has. For example, by default, the backlog is turned on for Scrum boards. You can turn it on in Kanban, but it's by default turned off. So Scrum boards will have sprints. So if you see the word sprint, Scrum board, that has iterations. So 1 to 4 weeks usually of work where the team works on it and then moves on to the next set of things. Whereas Kanban is about streamlining process and continual improvement. So Kanban does not have sprints. It's just constantly working. And Kanban, by out of the box, or when you first build the board, doesn't have a backlog. Just everything is in the leftmost column. You can add a backlog to Kanban, though, so please keep that in mind. But when you first make the project, you won't see it. And to answer our question, I should have moved this. Company-managed projects can have multiple boards. Team-managed projects cannot. Team-managed projects will just have a single board that we'll see when we jump into a team-managed project. And team-managed projects control their boards through what are called features. So this is an important distinction for those of us using team-managed projects and those of us sitting the exam. Our company-managed projects in general give us more features, more abilities. So when we go in, I'll show you how we can make multiple boards, but also how we can control them. And what we're talking about today covers over a third of the exam. So Atlassian clearly thinks this is the most important single topic for us to understand and really know once we go sit the exam. All right, I got about a third of us knew that team-managed projects can only have a single board. This will be a 1 to 5 or 1 to 4 question. How comfortable are you with board permissions? And a 1 is not a lot, and a 4 is going to be super comfy. And by board permissions, I mean the ability to create them or to view them, or how does access work, any topic like that. As I mentioned, our team-managed projects can come with up to 1 board. And so when you first make a team-managed software project, the board will probably just be enabled. And it's one of these views along the top. I think this example was a business project. But you just get a board. And it is not necessarily Scrum or Kanban until you go into features and flip some buttons on to enable backlogs or enable Scrum. So in team-managed projects, the project administrator has a ton of control over what is the board because they can go in at any time and flip some switches and hide the board entirely. They can flip some switches and change what the board can do. Do things like Scrum or Kanban. So when you're in a team-managed project and you don't see the board or it doesn't have certain features, the project admin's the person who will help you out. And we'll cover more what the admin does as we go. But the biggest limit is a single board. So again, team-managed projects are simpler. They let the project admin control it. However, we also have limitations. It's just about that project, and we can't suck in, I should have included this here too, we can't suck in work items from other projects. Now, I've mentioned this features thing, and this is relatively new. You'll see this. This is also included in company managed projects, this features idea. But we have a feature called a backlog that we can turn on or off. So that can also be enabled or disabled. And there's a whole host of other features in team managed projects. The idea here is it lets the project manager tailor the project to the needs of the team. So as the project manager, you can go in and turn on or off certain things if your team needs them, including things like the backlog. So again, advantage here is the team can decide what they want. Disadvantage is we get less flexibility because it's a simpler setup. And that is by design to allow that project admin to help get the job done without needing extra training, without having to have all the knowledge a Jira administrator needs. Now, contrast this to company managed. Company managed projects can have multiple boards, and they can be either Scrum or Kanban. And again, big difference, Scrum will have the sprints, Kanban will not. There's a create boards permission, you hit the plus, you can make new boards and just pick the type. And you do that right from the project. So you don't have to go into the project settings to do this. And as you can see in the screenshot, and as we'll see when we go live, a company managed project can have one or many boards. It depends on the needs of the team. And you'll even notice I've mixed the types of boards. I have a Scrum board and a Kanban board. The only way to know the difference is either the name or to open the board and see if there is a sprint. So annoyingly, the icons don't change. Like I would hope that the Scrum icon would be used for Scrum boards. It's not. They just have the generic board icon. Now, when you create a board in a company managed project, you have a lot of options, or a lot more options than you have in the team managed one. First, you give it some kind of name, and the name can be anything. And again, this is what will tell someone what it's for or who should use it. So when you make the name, double check that it makes sense. And Chad, I just saw your coffee is life. I'm going to go find my little coffee emoji. Here we go. Bleep. Also, shout out to Chad. He is one of the channel's coffee sponsors. So if you're looking for ways to help support me, a coffee membership is another way. I'll buy you coffee when I see you, and you get early access to videos and things. I'll come right back to your question too, Shar, before we jump into hands-on. It's a good one, though. The other thing to know when you make the board is what gets included in the board. In a team managed project, everything in the project is just sucked in, and that's just how it works. In a company managed project, though, the first option is all work items in your project, so it's guessing you want them all. However, you might instead choose to pull in work items just for a specific team. So maybe the team Coffee Champions is used, and that pulls in all of their work items. Or maybe a certain work type, or maybe a label. And there's one I chopped off here, a particular filter. So company managed boards give us a lot more control over what is in the board. We can even pull in work items from across different projects. And this is where permissions can become a little bit more hairy. I'll talk about some of the limitations as we go, but keep in mind your company managed boards can include work items from multiple sources. So not just the project the board happens to have been created in, but you can pull in work items across multiple projects into one board if you need to manage them and see them all in one spot. In my experience, I haven't done this too much. I typically have boards that focus on a subset of work items in one project. For example, we're building out an HR system, and I have a board just for my folks building out the onboarding module. Great. I pull that in by some JQL or by a team, and they can just focus on their work, while the people who are working on the recruiting aspect have a different board that just shows them their stuff. So this is another good example of, as an admin or someone configuring a board, we need to work with our team to know what they need so we can make the tool support their needs. Now, in addition to this, there's this permission called a board admin. And this is another frustration. I was told, hey, Rob, you're going to help this team. You're going to manage be their scrum master. And I didn't have board admin. And it took me a good 3 weeks to figure out this is a special permission because no one knew about it, at least no one I was talking to. In a company managed board, this is just done through configuring the board. And it's similar to adding someone to a project. They just have to be listed here under administrators. You can also include groups. So depending on how you want to do it, you can do individuals or groups. Keep in mind, they can then go in and change any of the configurations in the board. Right now, I'm unaware of any way to say, oh, the admin can only update the columns, or the admin can only change the name. It's all or nothing. So just keep that in mind. Typically, I wouldn't give this, like, it depends on the company and the people you're working with. On smaller teams and folks who I know and trust, I might just say, hey, everyone on the team have this so you can unblock yourselves. On bigger groups or where we need, a lot of standardization, I would keep this very tightly held and make sure there's a more robust control process for making changes to the board. Part of that is to make sure the team doesn't get surprised by changes. The last thing you want is for your development team or the team doing the work to be surprised that there's a new column or that the status have been mapped differently or that there's a whole new board, these kind of things. Now, these board permissions are unique per board. So if your project has multiple boards, you'd have to come in and tweak each board's list of admins as you go. In Team Manage, if you're the project admin, you're the board admin. So again, simpler, easier. Keep in mind, though, if you make someone a project admin in a team managed project, they get project admin for the team managed project. It sounds silly to say that, but there's no way right now to split off just being a board admin in a team managed project. You get all of administration or none of it. And this is where, again, team managed projects, we have to remember, are intended for small groups that don't need a lot of heavy lifting. They don't need a lot of robust things. Kind of a baseline is good and they can control their own destiny, so to speak. Tushar's question, can a team managed project have a kanban and scrum? No, they can't. They're stuck with a board, a singular board. So it's either 1 or 0 boards in a team managed project, and it's 0, 1, or many boards in a company managed project. Oh, wow. And it looks like most of us are very comfortable with board permissions. I love that. And I love that, again, because I was not comfortable with board permissions when I started. I didn't know what they were. It made my job very, very hard. So I'm glad the plurality, or the biggest single group that answered, 40%, are comfortable with them. I mentioned this last week, and if you've already signed up, I am putting together a full-length learning course on the ACA-905 on this exact thing. It'll be at least an hour, and it will cover in depth everything we're talking about, and honestly, probably some more stuff that I add. And so this QR code and the link I put in there, you can sign up to get notified. I'll send you an email when the course is ready, and I'll also throw in a discount code so you get a bit cheaper. I'll have 2 options. One option will include a certification voucher if you want to take the exam. It'll be a little bit more expensive, and a bit cheaper option that is just the content. Both will get you prepped for the exam and cover everything we're covering, and as well as some other stuff. So that's another way to learn this. And of course, you'll have the YouTube stuff. We'll just be there forever. All right, so popping over into Jira Cloud Premium. So I'm in Cloud Premium. There's nothing I'm doing in here that should be, should not be in free, standard, or enterprise. I'll try and call out differences. Also, please take a minute right now and just hit the like button. I have to get some water because I can't talk. I've got like 22 folks and 3 likes. Let's see if everyone could like it. That would be stellar. I've never got 100%, but we can dream. So this is a team managed project, and I know it's team managed because if I click on the 3 dots, I'll see the words team managed right here at the bottom. And I'll start here just to show the simpler of the two. But along the different views of the project, I've got board. And you'll notice it doesn't say Kanban or Agile or Scrum. It's just called board. Now, we can rename these things. So project admins can rename these tabs. So one thing you might do for your team, if you are using this as a Kanban board, just change it to be Kanban or Scrum or whatever makes more sense for your particular team. You can also move these around. That's beside the point. You'll notice if I go to more actions, this just relates to this thing. Now, if I go over to the side, unlike that company managed project that lists all of the boards, again, the team managed project doesn't. So if I open up a project and there's a board tab, but no list of boards on the side, that tells me team managed. In order to get access to this, again, I have to go into project settings and make someone a project admin. So this is something I may not want to do just because it then gives them the ability to manage the project. And especially in a team managed project, that's going to make it hard because they can go in and modify and change, request types or modify workflows or add fields. Because in a team managed project, that admin gets a lot of power. So just one thing that we really want to keep in mind when we're doing this. The other thing just to be aware of, again, it pulls in every work item in the project. And here I have turned on the backlog. So this is an optional feature that I can flip on or off. So for this, I just go into project settings and there's a features menu. And this includes features beyond just managing the board. Oops, sorry. It includes a whole bunch of features around the project, but I've got a backlog that I can turn on and off. And you'll notice when I turn off the backlog, it's going to say, hey, if you turn this off, sprints are also going to get turned off. So some of these features are interconnected. The way Jira is set up, in order to have sprints, you must have the backlog because that's where the sprints appear. So I can't have one and not the other. I can't have sprints and no backlog and vice versa. And if I go find sprints, that is its own separate feature. So this is how I can set up Kanban in a team managed project, is turn off sprints and turn off backlog, and then I just have a board. Or maybe I want Kanban with a backlog, I can turn that on, or maybe I just want to use full on scrum. But you'll notice because there's no backlog, I can't turn on sprints. So just something that we as admins have to be aware of. It will warn us there's a little menu saying requires backlog. Okay, fine. The other thing that's important in the features that we'll talk about more when we get to estimating is the estimation feature. So again, keep in mind in Team Manage, the project manager controls the features, and that then determines what is accessible by the team. The things that show up in this board, thank you, Jira, ask me if I want to move work items. The things that are accessible in the board is just everything in the project. So this simplifies access as well. If you get project access, if you're on the list, you should be able to see work items in here. So again, team managed, simpler. Going over to our company managed project, things get a lot more complicated, I'll say. Again, we can make new boards. And when we first make them is when we define what shows up in them. So Jira is not going to assume everything in the project. Oh, come back here. Typically when I'm working in boards, I just say everything in the project because the projects I work in happen to be the totality of the work for the thing. However, you can see all these different options, and this is dependent on how you're set up. So before you start doing this, a great reminder to go talk to the team and say, hey, what do we need in the board? It not beyond just what kind of type or what type of board, but what work items show up. The JQL filter, I'll talk about a little bit more as we go, but filter access can also dictate board access. So please keep in mind if you're using filters to drive your board and someone doesn't have access to the underlying filter, they'll have problems with the board. This is most obvious when you're doing one filter to drive the board. We'll dig in more in filters as we go, but it gets even more annoying and it can get more frustrating with cross-project boards. So I'll talk about that as we go. To access, I didn't talk about board settings in the team managed. The team managed settings to manage the board are just this gear right here. So it's just hanging out right on the board. And you see this if you're a project admin, again, a board admin. Future training will cover how to manage and maintain all of these columns. But I can also get into it by opening up project settings. So there's a board option in project settings, again, because it's linked and tied directly into the project admin permission. So you can either click on the gear or go into project settings. Company managed projects are different. If I go into project settings, there is no board option in here. And that's because it's a different permission. It's also possible to be a project admin without being a board admin. So this is another consideration. Every time I have happened to have been a project admin, I've also been a board admin, but it's possible to split these things. So keep in mind there might be instances where you have both, you have one or not the other, etc. It is also beneficial because it allows you to make someone on your team a board admin without giving them project admin access. And that is very beneficial because then you make sure they can't go and change the project. All they get is the board. It's also specific per board, as I mentioned. So each of these 4 boards will have its own list of admins. All right, opening up the board is where I add more admins. So there's just an admin administrator section. I can come in here and just type in names, or I can select user groups, sorry. And then at the bottom is the filter. We'll dig more into the filter as we go, but I'll say this a lot because it trips me up all the time. It probably shows up on the exam. It's something we should know. If you can't see the filter, you can't see work items in the board. Biggest source of frustration that I have seen using these, and it was because I just didn't understand that there was that extra layer of control around the filter that was different from the board. So that's the high-level access. And again, drilling into us the differences between team and company managed, because they're different enough that if you're unaware of them, it's going to cause a little bit of heartache. Here's a fun question. How do you disable ranking on a board? And I'll just drop this in as a poll. What are some other fun ones? I can't think of a good fourth option, so I just said join the Discord channel. And I'll just put a quick link to that here. That last one is not the correct answer. I just couldn't think of a fourth thing. I do have a Discord channel, about 200 folks, and they're talking about Atlassian-related topics. If you're not in there, it's not just about the exams and certifications. It's just about general Atlassian questions. So feel free to jump on in and join us. But this is another kind of accessy related thing, especially when we consider the filters. So in the company managed boards, a filter of some kind drives what shows up. And we'll see this again, but in this example, this is just everything in a certain project, whatever project number 10 is. The numbering starts at 10,000 for things like projects, custom fields, etc. So it's not saying I have 10,010, it's saying I have 10 projects at this point. But this filter is what's telling Jira, go get these work items and put them into this board. Now, this is only true for the company managed boards because team managed boards default to the whole project and we can't change that. So when someone's talking to me about, hey, what's the filter driving the board? That's an instant reminder that we're talking about a company managed project. And you'll see here even I can change the filter used by the board. So once we make the board, if we realize, whoops, we have to change the filter, we have to change what's in it, we as admins can go do that. Now again, if you can't see the filter, you can't use the board. And I bring this up so much because many times a team member comes to me and they're ticked off. You know, they just joined this team, they're excited to join, and they can't see any work. They can't see what their teammate sees. First thing I check is filter access. Are they in the group? Do they have the appropriate, access to the filter? Did I share it properly? Because I'm really bad at not clicking save or add when I make filters. So I'm a little bit paranoid about making sure my team has access to underlying filters so they can do their job. Now, I've mentioned you can pull in work items from multiple projects into a company managed board. This can be really useful, especially with bigger projects or to managing things across. Tushar, let me tie back. This relates to the filter access. I don't see any reason, and we can try this live. Again, a team managed project only has a single board, and that can only include work items from its own project. A company managed project can pull in work items from anything. If you can define it in JQL, you should be able to pull it into a company managed board. So, based on that, to your question, we should be able to have a company managed project board that pulls in work items from two separate team managed projects. Because by the time we get to the company managed board, it's just a filter. So if I can see it in the filter, I can pull it into the board. And that's another thing that just popped into my head. It's, based on this filter. So if I don't have access to the work items, if there's some work item security, or if I can't see the JQuil JSM project, they won't populate in the board for me. So Jira is still going to respect the underlying permissions and my own access in the board. A big call out if you're doing cross-project boards, those underlying permissions are respected, and there's a browse projects permission that's necessary in order to see the work items. So I kind of just spoke to this, but if I have two or three projects in my board and Tushar doesn't have essentially view access or browse projects permissions to those projects, he won't see those work items. They just don't show up. So keep this in mind as well. Probably more common in bigger environments or if you're dealing with a very big team. But one thing to consider is, hey, does Tushar have access to the MOBL project? Does Chad have access to JQuil JSM? Something to double check before you deploy the board, because if you do that, folks will go in and they won't be able to see anything. Again, source of frustration because the underlying access, something that you as the board admin can't control, will impact their ability to use the board. And that's at best frustrating, at worst causes a lot of big headaches. Now I had this question about ranking. This will show up, and they actually visually show you this in company managed projects, which is nice. But in the board, by default, you can click and drag and say, hey, this one is higher than that one. This work item is a higher priority than that one, just visually. You can disable this by removing an order by clause in the filter. So this is like an intermediate JQL thing to understand. But at the end of your search in JQL, you can tell Jira, hey, order my results by a column. Order it by priority descending. Highest priority at the top, lowest at the bottom. If you remove that clause from your filter, or if it never had it, you won't be able to stack rank the board. And so I'll show you what that looks like. And this really frustrated me when I first discovered it, because I had no idea this existed. In my little poll, looks like 100% of people nailed it. I probably made the answer fairly obvious. But this is another very common source of frustration, especially if you inherit a board, like you get it from someone else, you join a project, or if you have multiple admins and one of them just doesn't realize, what they're doing. It's very easy for someone to make a filter, think it's correct, and forget order by. Now, again, it will show you visually when you go into board configuration in a company managed project if it's turned on or not. And I don't know how new this is, but I'm really glad it's there because it makes it very simple to figure out, hey, can I rank this? And if you can't rank it, this is probably why. Next up, we have subfilters. These only show up in Kanban boards, and the main use case I am aware of for these is to remove completed items from your Kanban board. Now, essentially, this just applies another filter on top of whatever's coming into the board. There is I think it's a default subfilter, and it's basically saying so take the filter you have, take all the work items that fall into the board, and only show ones where there's an unreleased version or there's no fixed version. Now, I don't use these two fields very much, so this is why it was confusing to me. It's basically saying only show work that is not released, so hasn't been completed, and doesn't have a fixed version, hasn't been fixed. So this will let you fine-tune what shows up on your Kanban board. You can make this query whatever you want. The default for me seems to be good enough because it just removes those items after they move to a done or completed status or my team has released them. They will fade off the board, and they don't clutter it up. So keep in mind this exists. It only exists in Kanban boards, though. And part of that is because in Scrum, we have those sprints and the sprint ends, and then we repopulate the board. So subfilter is always an indication, hey, we're in Kanban. Tushar's question, 2 teams working in different team managed projects. You have a common backlog. My knee jerk, my friend, is you don't have a common backlog because you have 2 separate projects. And by definition, team managed projects are separate. However, it sounds like what you're saying is these teams work from the same, same pool of actual work. They just manage it in 2 separate projects. You would have to have a company managed project to blend that, or you just use a filter. So you wouldn't be able to do it in the project. Just set up some JQL that pulls in every work item from those 2 projects, or make a dashboard or something like that. But you would not be able to include that in either of those team managed projects boards because team managed project boards only support a single project right now. All right, folks, a quick like reminder for y'all. Please hit the like button. Super simple way to support me. Helps other people find it too. And honestly, that's what I care more about. And the same thing goes for my learning courses. If you see one of my learning courses that you like and you have any kind of hardship, reach out to me. Email's in the bottom right of your screen. I'll be happy to hook you up. All right, back to our boards. We're going to dig into these filters and how those can work. I'll start out, again, this is our company managed project, or sorry, our team managed project. And this is just everything in the project. Now the backlog is turned on. So this is just something to be aware of. If the backlog is turned on, it's possible there's work items hiding in the backlog. I only have 4 work items in the whole project right now. But this board should only show 3 because there's 1 item in the backlog. So they might be hiding, but they're all represented in here. It's just in the backlog. And again, no way for me to say, hey, go grab work items from the MOBL project because this is team managed. The scope of this board is just this particular project. So that kind of makes it easy. You can't see the project, you can't see the work items. Hey, you know what, Rodney? Alex isn't here. Oh no. For bit context for folks listening, Rodney is known as the Jira guy, super Jira expert, someone I go to all the time for help. He's also hanging out on our Discord. Alex Ortiz is someone else who personally does not like team managed projects, and he has some reasons. I stay away from which one is better. My goal is not to tell you team managed is better than company managed or company managed is better than team managed. My goal is to make sure everyone listening understands the differences so you can make your own choice based on your team's needs. And that for me is an important bit of tools. I might choose a team managed project if I know it's short term or if I know my team doesn't want to have to deal with an admin. But I also need to know a company managed project for someone like Tushar might make more sense because these boards can include work items from multiple projects. So this particular board, I think I've set up this one. Did I set up, was it this one? It was not this one. Was it this one? It was not this one. Okay, awesome. So I have a board here that I'm going to modify, and I'm going to go into board settings. And what I'm looking for is right on the first tab. I've got board filter. And even if I make this as a brand new board and I select project, like I just say grab everything in the project, there's still going to be a filter. So I'll go in and do this really quickly. More as a reminder that even though we select all work items in a project, Jira is still interpreting that as, oh, it's a filter that includes everything in the project. So this is that brand new board, and we can see there's a filter query. So even if I use one of those pre-selected options, team, label, whatever, it's interpreting and converting that into JQL. Now this can be intimidating if you don't understand JQL too much. It is fairly straightforward though, and in most cases, you don't have to get too fancy with the JQL for what you need. Again, you'll know what you need by talking to your team, but typically it's everything in this project or everything with a certain component or label, some way of saying what's the work focus to the team. Now you can click on filter details, and this is where you'll see if ranking is turned on. I don't know when they added this, but this is really helpful to me because it just shows me I can't click this to change it here. This is just telling me, hey, this is working. And then underneath that, I get the filter permissions. So again, the company managed project is driven by a filter, and they're putting all the information I need to know about the filter right here in the board settings. Prior to this, I'd have to go find the filter and go edit it. Now to do this, I can just click on Edit Filter Query, and this will pull me into the filter, so into Jira Search. And this is where I can modify the filter. So if I'm looking at the board and I'm like, hey, why is this included or not included? Or even if I'm looking at the board and I'm in Tushar's case where I have to blend in a new project, this is where I can do that. I can just add it to this filter, and I'll have to save it. So I have to run it once. But then I can click on Save, and I can either save changes or make a copy. In this case, I'll save changes, so I'll overwrite the existing filter. And if I go back to my board, that is now been updated on the board. So Tushar, this is how you could add 2 of them. Just start up a new company managed project and either say pull everything in this project or have some JQL ready to pull it in. Now when I go to this board, it's going to show me work items from multiple projects. So I'll just go up to my group by, and I can see one group of JQL or JQuil JSM and another for mobile dev. And so it's pretty, once you understand the underlying JQL, it's pretty straightforward and simple to add this. Again, it can be intimidating if you're new to JQL and don't quite understand it. So I guess one quick question. This will be a 1 to 4. Woo, not all in caps. So a 1, you are not very comfortable with JQL. A 4, very. And I'm using a very simple example. Like, you can make this filter query as sophisticated as you need to find the work items that your team needs to work on. We're just using in this example, these 2 projects. But again, you can slice and dice this any way you want. Just keep in mind, someone's ability to see these work items in the board is dependent on their access here. So if Rodney is complaining, hey, I can't see work items, I would have to open up filter details and then edit permissions to ensure he can see it. Now this particular one defaulted to the entire project can see it, and that's because it was created when I made the project board. However, you might have to go in and tweak this, and this is where you do it. You just click Add Permissions. So maybe I want to include the JQL project people. You must click Add. This drives me insane. If you just click Save from here, they're not actually added. So I'll click Add. Now I see them both. And now those other individuals can come in and see it. But again, the nice thing is if I go refresh the board settings page, and I open up filter details, it will now show me the filter permissions. And yes, Rodney, we'll stay out of the... I'm staying away from that debate in this particular instance, but there are use cases for a team-managed project, and there are cases where you don't want to use one. And so for those of you who are just learning this or just starting to become more aware of it, keep talking to your teams to figure out what's needed, but also talk to other people in your organization who use Jira, because they may have guidance or they may have a good reason to use a team-managed or a company-managed project. And Tushar's expanding on his question. This is where, again, Atlassian will offer us ideas and give us tools, and then it's up to us as the admins, the people working with the teams, to figure out a path forward. So I can provide guidance in my own experience, but someone like Tushar knows how their team works or knows their needs. It's up to each of us then to adjust and adapt and configure things. Some of that adjusting might be sitting down with your team and saying, hey, Rodney, I think it's insane you're working this way. Is there a good reason why? And then have them explain why. And they might be like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we can try something else. So sometimes the change necessary isn't in Jira. Sometimes the change necessary is with the process and how we choose to work. And that's where our knowledge as admins, as board configurators, is that the right term? Board configurers is important because we can bring what the tool is capable of, and the team will bring what we need it to do. And together, we can figure out, oh, we just need to modify the board filter to include our projects. Work item ranking. I had some I have a lot of fun just flipping this off just to see what happens. So I'm quickly going to demonstrate what happens if this is disabled. And again, this is the order by rank or order by clause in my JQL. Stack ranking lets me do this. I can reorder bug found is number 1 or test is number 2. Typically, this is done, especially in a backlog, to indicate which items to start with. So start at the top and work your way down. If this is disabled, though, I won't be able to do that. So I'm going to go back to my filter, and all I'm going to do is get rid of order by rank ascending. This is more common to miss if you manually type in your JQL or if you're using an existing filter, because commonly order by rank might not be used in a filter. But you'll notice now I can't reorder. I can move them between columns, but I can't move test under this is a test. It just doesn't work. So this is a signal right away if your team is complaining, hey, I can't reorder work items. You go, oh no, I got to go look at the filter. Also, you can go into the board settings. And as I mentioned, they have this fun little... here it is. The rocker has just vanished. So now it's saying, oh, I can click on this to allow it. And Atlassian is nice enough to go do this for me. It's going to go modify the filter. However, it rips out the other order by clauses. So keep in mind, if you're using an existing filter that has an order by clause, this will remove it and add in order by rank. And it's modifying the filter. So if other boards use that filter, it will also impact them. So another consideration is this won't only impact this board, it impacts anyone using the filter, even if they're just using it to view work items or if they're using it to power a board. So very important to keep in mind, we're not just modifying our own thing. It's not a team managed project. It's across the board. Bad play on words there. But once that's back on, you can go back in and start clicking and dragging things around. All right, quick water break for Rob. Most of us are fairly comfortable with JQL. One person is not very comfortable, though. Thank you for sharing that you don't know what it is or you don't feel comfortable with it. Like many aspects of Jira, it's just like a habit, something that practice always helps with. I've got some videos on this channel and I've done live streams on JQL because finding things in Jira is one of the most frustrating things about Jira. And I just have the luxury of having done it, for a decade now. Woo, I'm old. Quick reminder, folks, if you're liking this, please hit the like button. About 20 folks, 8 likes. Absolutely love that. And also check out that QR code right under my head. That's where you'll get notified when the course for the 905 is ready. Hoping to have it ready next week. We'll see. That's a good stretch goal for Rob. All right, folks, what other questions do you have? Chat is pretty quiet, which is okay. Tushar, real quick. 2 teams have work items in common and some specific to the team. Yeah, my friend, that's an interesting case. Yeah, either, is there any reason you couldn't have everyone in one project and then use something else like a component or a team to break out the work? And, drop me an email, drop me a line in Discord. I'll be happy to dig in more. But this is where it's interesting for me. There's the way that most people think is ideal, and then there's what most people have to do because we live in reality. And finding ways to adjust the system and adjust our teams to those things is important. I do also want to call out, I have a whole learning platform now. I'll drop this link in the chat. These are all paid learning courses, but they cover topics like Jira Virtual Agents, like other certification exams. This is one place you'll find the 905 when it's ready. I'll continue to populate this with things. And again, if you have any kind of hardship, please shoot me an email. I'll be happy to find something that works so you can get access to these things and learn. It's more important to me that you all know how these things work and you are not frustrated in your jobs. Then I make a couple extra dollars. So please feel free to check these out. If you really need access, let me know. To clarify, Rodney, Tushar's in team managed projects. He's got 2 team managed projects right now, not a company managed one. So in my mind, Rodney, it's either he needs one company managed to pull in both boards, or he needs a dashboard or a filter to handle it. But if there's a third option, please let me know. I would love to know about it. All right, folks, that's all really on access and permissions. For me, it really boils down to the underlying filter for company managed being the biggest pain that you might run into. So what's next for next time? We're going to dig into, I believe it's columns and swim lanes. Rodney, I'll come back to your question in a second. You're musing. Please study on your own. Like, go get hands-on. I'll use Tushar as an example. He may have some ideas now about what can work. I'll encourage him to go in to his Jira and poke around in these projects or to examine a filter to see if he can get this list of work items. For everyone else, please get hands-on, especially if you're unfamiliar with JQL or that kind of thing. Make sure you're making time to go practice some of these skills and experience them. I learn a lot setting up these trainings because I have to go break the thing. I have to go break the order by just so I can see what happens and I know how to fix it. Very beneficial. This is especially true if you're looking to earn that certification. Having hands-on experience is very critical to being successful. This 1 hour we get is not nearly enough time, so please keep coming to these sessions, review them, get notified when the course is ready. I'll drop that link again. But the more exposure you get, the better. Make time to study too. I write things down on my notebook and I review them quite a bit. That helps my brain. And the course will include information on how to study and prep for the exam, not just what the topics are. I do also have a Discord community. We talk about Atlassian topics, not just exams, but a great place to go. There's 200-ish folks in there, including experts like Rodney and many others who can help out. DB, thank you. I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you for the support. DB's found another way to support the channel, these super chats. I also have channel memberships, which is a recurring way to support me, but you also get some stuff out of it, some emojis, a channel badge, that kind of thing. So if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I have many options to help you out. But let me know how I can help you as well. Shoot me an email, bottom left, there is a email. Find me on Discord. Rodney, I feel the same. I'm just some guy, and I'm some guy that people think knows a lot about Jira. I know some stuff. Rodney, I think, knows a lot more than I do, which is why I'm glad he's here. But our next session is next Friday. And again, we're going to talk about columns and swim lanes. Chad, I'm sorry, swim lanes are the horizontal things, not the vertical things, to tie back to that. Oh, Tushar, thank you, my friend. And this is another thing. Please tell me if there's something on the screen that doesn't make sense. I pick on my audio a lot, but anything I can do to make your lives easier or make it easier to learn or access things, please tell me. So I will fix this overlay for next Wednesday, which is my next live stream, because Monday is a holiday in the States. So yeah, that's everything on the access and permissions. I'll keep the stream open for a little bit. There's a couple of things I need to adjust, but we had a question, I think. Jeff is asking, in Tushar's case, wouldn't each team have their own work items, even if it's common work? In my mind, Jeff, that's usually best practice. However, it's up to each team to figure out how to use Jira. There may be a compelling reason that I don't know for there just to be a single work item that is shared or commonly referenced, or that both teams have to just have visual access to. So in that case, that shared board could be very beneficial. But this is another good thing that we can help each other with. We can challenge each other's ideas. And I'm being very specific with the word ideas. I'm not going to say that, I'll pick on Chad, that Chad is wrong and Chad's a bad person. I'm going to say, okay, Chad, can you explain this idea and help me understand it? And here's why I think we can try something else. Because really what we're focusing on is, how do we as a group get better? What can we all do to support each other? It's not necessarily about the best idea. It's about the best idea that supports the team. And as long as we're all clear on that, that can really help. All right, folks, I'll leave the chat open for a bit while I do some cleanup on this end, but I want to thank you all for joining me. I really enjoy putting these together. I learn a lot. I started the study sessions because I wanted to learn, I wanted to earn certifications, and here we are. It's been like 5 months. So be on the lookout for more. I will see you next Friday or in other streams. I'll drop a couple more links in the chat just if you're curious and interested in terms of supporting the channel, but also learning. I'll go dig up the JQL trainings I have. Otherwise, have a great weekend wherever you are, and I hope to see you again here soon. All right. Thank you, Chad. There's a channel membership option. Again, a recurring way to support me. And where are my JQL videos? Oh, come on, YouTube. If I was smart, I would have a playlist. I do. Aha! And I'll drop a playlist to JQL if folks need some support there. All right, folks, there we go. Remember, our next session is next Friday. I'll do one more poll just to see what y'all thought of it. Basically, was the session helpful? I'm always looking for feedback on improving. If you say no, feel free to reach out to me privately or publicly and just let me know how it could be better or how it could be helpful. Again, I enjoy these. That's not the important part, though. The important part is you find them useful and interesting. So, appreciate your feedback there. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining, and looking forward to seeing y'all here again very, very soon, to quote another YouTuber.